And without further ado, we'll begin by introducing the STS-125 crew.
Okay. Straw. Crew of 7.
We're short a chair.
All right.
Go ahead. Missing a chair.
You got to stand.
We're not good at math. We didn't count, it's NASA. We didn't think to count the chairs.
Hey, look at that picture.
Who is that? Picture behind us.
He's the only guy that's supposed to be here, isn't he?
All right. Thanks. Let me just introduce the commander, Scott Altman. Scott was selected as an astronaut candidate in December 1994. He reported at NASA's Johnson Space Center in March 1995. He's a veteran of 4 space flights, and, of course, the most recent one being the STS-125 mission to service, the final service mission to the Hubble Space Telescope. Scott?
Well, thank you very much. It's really great to be here today. We've been having a tremendous week. It really is, when you think about it, 40 years ago, yesterday, we landed on the moon. Now we're here with you celebrating that this week and also talking about our mission, which I think really is an heir to that, as the Hubble Space Telescope has been a step in exploration all its own. It gathers the light from billions of light years away, takes us across the universe to distant galaxies, and lets us dream about where we're going. So we're really looking forward to sharing a little bit with you about our experience working on the telescope. It's been an honor to do that. As the first step of doing that, I'd like to introduce the crew to you. To my left is Greg Johnson, my pilot. He was my right-hand man, helping with all the checklists, running procedures, going uphill and coming back on entry, doing the rendezvous, helping with inspection ops of the vehicle, as well as being the photo TV lead, which meant changing out a lot of the tapes so that we would have a video to share with you today. So he really worked hard at doing that and did a great job. To his left is Megan MacArthur, my MS2. MS2 is a critical job. That's the flight engineer, the person who kind of sits behind and in between the mission commander and pilot. And I called her the quarterback. When we'd have a problem, she'd call the play, and then we'd execute it and kept track of everything. But that wasn't her only job on the flight. Once we got to orbit, she had to go to work grappling, berthing the Hubble Space Telescope, then using the arm to run the guys around during the EVAs, and finally deploying the telescope and letting it go, putting it back on its voyage of discovery. In addition to that, using the arm to inspect the vehicle both before we got to Hubble and after. So another tremendously hard-working crew member. Now we get, no. Drew's still a good, hard-working crew member. Drew Feustel, my MS5.
Yay, Drew.
Drew has the honor of being the first-time space flyer to ever do 3 spacewalks on a Hubble. Mike Massimino, who we'll meet in a minute, had previously held the record for 2 spacewalks as a rookie on Hubble. Now, Drew had 3 this time, going out with John. He also started out encountering our very first bulky bolt and took me to the edge of my seat as I wondered whether or not it would break. And we'll see in the video whether or not it did. So, next to him is a Hubble veteran who probably needs no introduction, John Grunsfeld. John made his 3rd trip to the Hubble Space Telescope. He was our Hubble expert, also our astrophysicist expert. So bring on the hard questions. I know who to send them to. And made 3 spacewalks this time. I think I may have already said that. But tremendous work on bringing the advanced camera for surveys back to life. There's Mike Good next, MS1 for ascent. Mike also worked with inspection ops, helping us with the robotic arm. He was key to Rendezvous, using the handheld laser to check our speed, just like the Metro Police might on your way home tonight. But I needed that information for the rendezvous, and it was critical. Also did 2 spacewalks handling some of the pretty fine control of the gyros as we were putting them in, delicate operations that we were pretty concerned about, because if the gyros weren't in the telescope wouldn't be pointing in the right direction. So did a great job on those 2 spacewalks. And with his partner, Mike Massimino, down at the end, also known as Astro Mike. Mike did do more than just Twitter while we were on board. He performed 2 spacewalks, helped with the robotic operations during grapple, inspection, and deploy, as well as being the IV. Actually, all the spacewalkers worked inside as well as outside going through the spacewalks. But Mike most famously ran into that sticky bolt that wouldn't come undone, so he was the muscle behind the operation and just manually ripped it out of its post, and you'll get to see that today. Well, I think what I've done, you've met the crew, and now I'd like to go ahead and start showing you what we actually did in space. So we're ready to roll the tape.
Let's see, I'll annotate the start of the movie. We've got about 20 minutes here, and we start with the launch, which usually doesn't need much explanation. You can see Atlantis on the left and Endeavour, our rescue vehicle, on the right. Close up Atlantis, just make sure we're going to get to the right vehicle.
Hey, with 2 out there, that's a question.
And a happy crew that after a 7-month delay from October to May.
Can you bring up the audio?
There's Scooter getting in first. There's me getting in my seat, kind of tight, slipping in there. And finally, Megan last.
Gonna go for launch. GC. Go. Got it. Go. Fido. Go. Prop. Go. GNC. Go. Max. Go. Eagle. Go. Ecom. Go. FAO. Go. Payloads. Go.
It's a great day to go fly. On behalf of the KSC Processing and Launch Team, I'd like to wish you, your crew, and the whole Hubble Space Telescope team a great mission. Good luck, Godspeed, and we'll see you back here in about 11 days.
And after a go from Houston and the Cape, you see the water suppression system kick off. 6 seconds later, the main engines light right prior to launch. And the mains lit, and we had our first master alarm going uphill, which got our attention. A lot of discussion on the flight deck there. We rolled on heads down, and you can see a good view from the solids. After about 2 minutes, we get off the solid rocket boosters, and you'll see that right now. And you'll see Atlantis fly away with the external tank booster on the right, and then up at the top you'll see Atlantis here in a second. Finally, Mike Good and John Grunsfeld took a video and stills of the external tank when we had main engine cutoff. Bueno and John opened the doors, and we were off and running for the mission.
Our task for Flight Day 3, of course, is to chase down the telescope in orbit, and you're seeing scenes from that here. Ray J was running the checklist from the commander's seat, and Scooter and I are at the aft flight deck windows along with Mike Good looking out the overhead and giving us that range rate information. And as we get close enough to the telescope, we use the robotic arm to reach out and grab it and then park it at the back of the payload bay on the rotating servicing structure. Once that's complete, the guys can get ready to go out and do their EVAs. There's a lot of prep work, of course, that goes into that. They got to get the suits ready and checked out. They've also got to get all of their tools ready, and I think it was something like 114 brand new tools developed specifically for this mission. So there's a lot of prep work that goes on there. There's Ray J with the EVA checklist, helping the guys get into their suits for each of the EVAs.
And Flight Day 4 was the first day of 5 back-to-back EVAs. And John and I had a few last words before heading out, and this is John on the first spacewalk coming out the hatch, and I came out as well, just following him, smiling from ear to ear, and that pretty much stayed on my face the whole time. The day started out with the replacement of Wide Field 2 camera with Wide Field 3 camera, and unfortunately, Wide Field 2 didn't want to come out of the telescope, so we spent a little time.
Okay, here we go. 3 2, 1, 0. Ignition sequence start. 3, 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 2, 1, 0. Ignition sequence st You got it.
working that bolt.
turned. It
And,
definitely turned.
we spent,
Yep.
I don't know, probably, half hour, 45 minutes trying to get that bolt out, but finished out that task with the replacement of wide field, replacing it with the wide field 3 camera, which takes some, we're looking forward to some spectacular images of deep space with that. And it's quite a large instrument, as you can see there. It's one of the radial instruments about the size of a baby grand piano. And I think the whole astronomical community was very pleased that we were able to work through that first of many contingencies throughout the mission, sort of one after another. And great shot from the aft flight deck as we stowed the old camera, and this is a little rewind here of us installing wide field 3 smoothly into the telescope to finish out the first half of the day. And the remainder of the activities for this day were also a high priority for us. It was the replacement of the command and data handling module that had failed back in the fall and caused us to delay our launch until May. And we had planned, for the last part of the 6 months training for the mission, really working around replacement of that module, and we were happy to get that installed as well to get the telescope back up to operating condition, really to have the ability to communicate with the scientific instruments. And so EVA day 1 went well for us. We completed all the tasks and then started getting ready for the next day for Mike and Mike to head out the door.
Well, after a long day of work outside, there's still a lot of work to do. Once they come back inside, we still had a couple hours of work just gathering up all the tools from that day, put them away, and then find all our tools for the next day and set up our mini workstations and the tool board that you see there. So on Flight Day 5, we went out on the second of our 5 back-to-back EVAs. Mass is already outside there. He's welcoming me on my first trip out the hatch and into the vacuum of space there. Mass got right to work there. He's back at the telescope. You can see his reflection there. And he's going to help me open up the doors so we can actually climb inside the telescope and swap out the 3 rate sensor units. Each of these 25-pound boxes had 2 gyros inside, so we replaced all 6 gyros. There's a shot of Mass actually inside the telescope. He's disconnecting the rate sensor unit, and then you can see on his helmet cam, he's handing it out to me. And that one came out very easily. This was the first of the 3 that we were swapping out. So then here I'm using a pick, what we call a pick stick, kind of a modified Home Depot tool to put a short moment of happiness there as we got the word that the first box was good to go. We struggled on the next 2, and then also struggled getting the doors closed at the end. But after 6 hours, we were complete with the first part of our spacewalk, and we were ready to move on to the second task, which was to replace one of the 2 batteries. This is a battery, not a AA, but a 500-pound nickel hydrogen battery, and we replaced one, and then the other team did on their last EVA. So here we are back inside after an 8-hour spacewalk, celebrating with the boss and trying to get our story straight.
Well, no rest for the weary. We did, as Drew said, 5 back-to-back EVAs. So this is going out right the next day for EVA 3. Our primary task on EVA 3 was to again open up the big doors on the telescope and take out a really historic instrument, the corrective optics Space Telescope Axial Replacement, otherwise known as COSTAR. This is the one that has the little arms that came out and corrected the incorrectly shaped mirror back in 1993 that restored Hubble's vision for all the scientific instruments, as well as the wide field too. But we took out that big refrigerator-sized instrument. Drew trained for years in the gym, lifting weights, to be able to handle holding those things at one point with just one hand to get it out. And then we put in the new Cosmic Origin Spectrograph, which will be a great instrument that will help put some of the physics into astrophysics. After that, we went on to the first of the instrument repairs, where we actually went into the instruments and pulled tiny screws out. Here you can see me with a screwdriver and then a power screwdriver. This was part of our mission devoted to the study of tiny screws in space. In order to get access to 4 circuit cards, you could just see them there for a moment, that we pulled out and put in new circuits. Fortunately, the first 3 cards came out easily. The fourth one gave us a little bit more trouble, but we got them all out and put new electronics in and have restored the vision of the advanced camera for surveys, which we put in on the previous mission. Mike Massimino actually hooked it up, and it died just a couple of years ago due to a power failure, and we put in new electronics that brought that back to life. Closing out EVA-3 as we fly over the Baja Peninsula, heading southward over Mexico. We were pretty happy after that EVA. That was one we were very worried about how it would go, and it ended up being just in 6.5 hours. And here you can see me coming in, adrenaline still carrying me through the airlock.
We did get a chance to eat in space, and this is one of the group times we did eat. And you can see John there upside down eating. So you could eat in whatever attitude you want to do. Here's Drew making a tortilla, and if you just leave everything very still, you can make a pretty nice tortilla there. We had to include him eating it at the very end. I did some exercise in space. I shot an IMAX movie scene, and then I had a break, so I was on the bike, and we did exercise. For all the kids, we had to show this. I was sitting in the space potty. There's some words there, but I didn't include them. You can guess what that's for, and you can guess what that's for. We did have a problem with Atlantis with a little bit of water on the water separator, and you can see Megan putting the light on and going actually in the floor of Atlantis. You can see all the wires, and below those streamer, the formers there is actually on the other side of that is tiles. So we're on the very bottom of Atlantis there. And in a second here, there's Scooter with a rag cleaning up some water on the floor. And we did one experiment. John is activating this experiment here. So he's turning a crank, and that activated it. And then I think it was 24 hours later, I deactivated it. And so we did one experiment.
We were celebrating the 400th anniversary of Galileo's observations with his telescope, and that is an exact replica of Galileo's telescope, the telescope he used to do his observations. And so John and I are playing around with it. We also had it on TV show.
Which
Good
is
to see you again.
Likewise.
In my corner.
In your Scooter's
Scooter's
corner.
corner.
And he's actually.
Luckily, we didn't have any sponsors that were upset with their ratings. It was on NASA TV only. And here's no words, but Scooter's explaining how we rendezvous with the telescope, believe it or not. And we had some press conferences. We got a call from the president, and we had a Senate hearing while we were up in space as well, and that was all kind of fun. For EVA-4, and we're getting the telescope in position for that, it was Mike Good and I, Bueno and I, went out again. It was our turn to go out. And the major task was to repair the Space Telescope Imaging Spectrograph, or what we call STS is the acronym for it. And everything was going pretty well until we had to get that handle off that you see there on the right. That's my helmet camera. And I just could not get this one lower bolt to go. And we went and got some contingency tools. We even picked up some tape, believe it or not.
Darn handrail.
Sunset in 11 minutes.
Andrew just summed it up, that darn handrail. So the solution came to just yank it off. And this was not downlinked, so you're some of the first people to ever see this publicly. But this is what I was doing when no one else was looking. Yeah. And it worked just fine. I was very glad that we did not have downlink. Thank you for applauding me for breaking the telescope. After we got that thing out of the way, we were able to continue with the repair, and we had a few little problems, but nothing like that handrail being in the way. That's a capture plate that we put over the instrument that allowed us to access 117 small screws that we needed to remove from the access panel. Then we removed this power supply, put a new one in, sealed it up, and so far so good. It looks like STS is up and working again. I think we're on to EVA 5 now.
On EVA 5, we put in the second of the new batteries. And you can see Drew and myself, this is a view from my helmet camera exchanging those batteries. It really was a joy to be able to handle those 450-pound, almost 500-pound batteries with ease. We also changed out a fine guidance sensor. This is one of the other parts of Hubble that allows it to point so accurately for such long periods of time, about the size of a baby grand piano again, and I had to maneuver that around. I had a stuck bolt on that as well, but by the time we got to the 5th EVA, we know how to handle that. As part of our extreme Hubble makeover, we also put on some new insulation on the outside of Hubble to help it in its hopefully long life ahead to stay cool. After 5 EVAs, we found that there were no more parts in the payload bay that we hadn't already installed, and it was time to say goodbye to Hubble the telescope, wish it well on its voyage.
And after all the repair and upgrade work was completed, of course, it was time to release the telescope, so we used the robotic arm again to pull it up out of the payload bay and hold it out over the side. And then you'll see us back away from it, and Scooter and Ray J do a series of burns to move us away. This is everybody kind of getting their last look before we send it on its way. I think there's some audio here.
And down.
10
free
seconds.
prize, Scooter, you got that. Let's see. I'm going to select
5 seconds. The mode switches in auto. 3, 2, 1, release. I'm backing away.
I see you got it open.
Clear the pin.
Clear the pin. Mode switches in off. Clear the antenna.
And there it goes. Scooter's just done the impulses to move us away, and you'll see the telescope go right over the overhead windows. Very, very large telescope, about the size of a bus. So what you can't see here is all of us ducking down because it looks like it's going to just clock us right in the head. On the bottom of the telescope there, you can see the soft capture mechanism that we installed for a future vehicle to go up there to the telescope. Here you see, once again, a whole bunch of bodies crammed onto the flight deck there, trying to get one last look at the telescope as it goes away to continue its voyage of discovery in the universe. There's Ray J and Scooter consulting over the checklist and running through the procedures to move us away. It's a nice shot that Mike Good and John, I think, took.
Kind of the final sunset on Hubble.
Here we are doing an orbit adjust burn. We were up at a higher altitude, and we brought part of our orbit down into a lower altitude to get us out of that high debris zone. Then we had some time off, actually. We got to do a video conference with our families and basically just do some fun astronaut tricks. Here we are playing with our food. And here we are conducting some fluid experiments in microgravity. There's some tasty water there. Here we're looking at stability and rotation in microgravity. It's a very, very important experiments that we're doing.
This actually was called up by MIT. They wanted to see us.
MIT asked us to do this very important research for them, so we were helping them out.
Of course, near the end of the mission, while the spacewalkers are all happy to be done, we still have to land. So we're taking a look here at a computer simulation to practice the whole flight deck team getting back into rhythm, going through entry, and practicing a little bit, and getting a readout. Then on Friday, the day we were supposed to land, we got into our orange suits and then got out of them. And on Saturday again. And then finally on Sunday we got into them, but we got waved off for one day. So you can see Megan was impressed with my Stevie Wonder imitation. It is an incredible vehicle that takes you home through this plasma, 3,000-degree, glowing white hot behind us there. Finally flying into the daylight, landing at Edwards because the weather was too bad at Kennedy still, and coming around till we roll on final. We're about 12,000 feet up at this point, falling at 12,000 feet per minute. The shuttle's a glider, and from the point we burn our engines 12,000 miles away, we know for sure that we're going to be hitting the ground somewhere. The challenge is to have the gear down, as Ray J put it down, and the runway underneath you when that happens. All told, though, it was great to be back with the vehicle full of used parts, with all the new stuff left up there on Hubble, and all the connections made. Everything seems to be working well. We're really happy that Hubble is still up there continuing its voyage. And I think we're going to see a little clip with some comments by John after this.
This is a really tremendous adventure that we've been on, a very challenging mission. Hubble isn't just a satellite. It's about humanity's quest for knowledge. As Arthur C. Clarke says, the only way of finding the limits of the possible is by going beyond them into the impossible. And on this mission, we tried some things that many people said was impossible. Fixing stiff, repairing ACS, achieving all the content that we have in this mission. But we've achieved that, and we wish Hubble the very best. It's really a sign of the great country that we live in that we're able to do things like this on a marvelous spaceship like Space Shuttle Atlantis. And I'm convinced that if we can solve problems like repairing Hubble, getting to space, doing the servicing we do, traveling 17,500 miles an hour around the Earth, that we can achieve other great things like solving our energy problems and our climate problems. All things that are in the middle of NASA's prime and core of values. I want to wish Hubble its own set of adventures, and with the new instruments we've installed, that it may unlock further mysteries of the universe.
And that's where we are now.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Scott, and STS-125. We, before you guys came in, we asked how many people skipped working and actually watched the flight day to day, and hands shot up in the air. So as you guys were going through the drama on orbit, we were all watching closely, and we kept getting tweets saying, you know, I can't wait for the next one. What's going to happen with the handrail, and what's going to happen with the cards? So we were all kind of living it down here as well. We'll take questions here at the audience for the crew. Remember to wait for the microphone's going to go around. Raise your hand, wait for the microphone, and please state your full name for us. So, go ahead. We'll go in order over here. Okay.
Right. Alan Fromm in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Have you heard much or anything really good intelligence about how the Hubble telescope is performing now that you made the repairs?
John, go ahead.
In fact, we were up at the Space Telescope Science Institute this morning, and we got a brief on the health of all the instruments. And they're through most of the program of verifying that everything works properly. There are a lot of mechanisms inside of these instruments. In some cases, the cosmic origin spectrograph, they have to let it vent because it turns out the orbiter is actually pretty dirty, and we're pretty dirty compared to the cleanliness requirements that they need. So they've actually made their way through probably 85% of all the checkouts of all the instruments, and they've started doing the calibration imaging. And so the first week of September, we'll see the first images, and so far everything's working great.
Hi, Peter Teague from the Boston, Mass. area. First, from all amateur astronomers, I'd like to thank Mike for first breaking it, but then fixing the Hubble telescope for us.
You're welcome.
And then, secondly, maybe this question could go to John, my buddy, ham radio operator there. Actually, I know something about contamination control engineering, and I wonder if you could just give us an idea about how contamination control actually was difficult and something you had extra that you had to think about when you were repairing the Hubble telescope.
Actually, that's a great question, contamination control. The Hubble is an optical telescope and an ultraviolet telescope. In fact, it's that ultraviolet capability that really makes Hubble unique. Being above the atmosphere, it can see the ultraviolet light from hot stars, distant galaxies, and it's very easy to contaminate optics such that it can't see that ultraviolet light. And so we're all trained to be very careful with the way we operated in the telescope, that we didn't generate debris, but also in preparation for the mission. The space shuttle itself was cleaned extensively. They put new payload bay liners inside that were brand new and clean. Our spacesuits had to go through vacuum systems to sort of bake out all of the volatiles, the organic molecules that might get into the telescope. And then when we had the problem with STS, we were very worried about what might happen, with debris when the handrail was broken off. And so MAST took Kapton tape, a kind of clear plastic tape, and taped up the end that was going to be broken so that if there was debris, it would be contained. And it was contained, and then Mike Good was able to capture that in the disposal bag that was designed for that handrail. So that's a big issue with Hubble.
Yeah, I was more worried about the debris we would kick up pulling that thing off than actually being able to do it. So that was our concern.
There's a question in the back over there.
Here?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Sherry Laskin. I live on the Space Coast. So I just want you to know that whenever we all get so excited and are just on the beach and we're waiting and waiting, and then it's scrubbed. And then we go through it again, and we go through it again, and you can just feel the depression that overtakes the neighborhood whenever the takeoff is scrubbed. How do you get yourselves, I'm sure you get bummed out when it doesn't go and you have to resuit up, and how do you deal with that? How do you get yourself down and then bring yourself back up?
Well, no. Fortunately, we don't have to answer that question because they flew with me, and every time I've gotten in an orange suit, I've gone out to the pad and launched. So we've never scrubbed. I can say that now without worrying about it because I don't think I'm flying again. So I'm not going to jinx myself for next time. But now the crews, before us and the crews after us went through that. You have to be ready to go every day when you go out there. And it does get tiring. You're in the vehicle for 3 hours. We always said the fastest way out of those orange suits is to launch. Because if you scrub, you got to spend another hour while you get the hatch open and come out and get out. So you're always very happy when the countdown goes and you get off the pad. Yeah.
He was tired.
Yes, I'm sure Roman there was getting a little tired of going back and forth. We were rooting for him to get off that last time. Yeah, I wasn't going to go there.
And of course, you guys were supposed to launch in October. You guys were all trained, ready to go. And
that one, go ahead.
No, that was I remember it was a different sort of scrub. We had the science and data handling system. Didn't work on the telescope, so we scrubbed about just outside of 2 weeks from launch. I remember we were in a almost all-day sim, and we kind of got the word, and so that was a pretty good depression. And we all went out to dinner with our families, and recounted that at least we'll have Christmas, but then we got back up and got back into the training track, and to a small extent, I think we were better prepared in the end. So what I think we were very happy to go on time in May. But there was some depression, at least on my end, for slipping 7 months.
Okay, more questions here. We've got a bunch. So in the back, great.
Hi, I'm Andrea Schwartz from Northampton, Massachusetts. And I teach astronomy and physics at a community college. And one question I always have my students debate is whether NASA should be focusing their time, energy, and money on more manned missions or more unmanned missions. So I'm curious what you think about this. Being a manned mission that was servicing an unmanned mission.
Go robots! Yeah.
Drew, do you want to take
No,
that?
no.
I
already voted.
All right. Well, let me spend one quick minute on that, and that's that I don't think it has to be a fight between the humans and the robots. Hubble is probably, in my mind, the best example of finding the best parts of each element of that. Hubble's up there right now doing its work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We can't stay up there that long to do that. But having people able to go to it and service it has made it the success that it became after the black eye it was. And then it's not a 19-year-old telescope anymore. It's a brand new telescope with new technology that we put in every time we go to it. So I think Hubble is really the finest example of the way humans and machines can work together and do things in space, and I hope we do more of that.
Just to add, humans first, then machines.
Remember, in all the science fiction shows, you have people going out there to distant galaxies, and when there are machines, that's the Borg. They're the bad guys.
I have kids who are now teenagers that are going to be going to college, hopefully soon. So I would say manned missions are very important to keep us employed.
Hi, Tim Lynch. I'm from Richmond, Virginia. I wanted to know how your training on the ground compared to what actually happened or you experienced in the mission when you were actually in space.
Drew.
There's a couple aspects to that, and I'll just talk about the EVA aspects because that was all I was allowed to do in space.
You were very important.
Yeah.
Come on.
But I can tell you that when I got out, this was my first space flight, and on the first spacewalk going outside into the payload bay, my mind was suddenly back at the neutral buoyancy lab at the Johnson Space Center, and the thought occurred to me, which others have told me as well, but I wasn't thinking about that at the time. It was an original thought at the moment that said, wow, I feel like I'm right back at the neutral buoyancy lab. So it was really identical to that setup that we had. The hardware was all where we expected it to be. So, you know, from that point of view, everything was where we thought it would be, and all of our movements that were so deliberate at the neutral buoyancy lab were equally deliberate doing the real spacewalks. As far as the contingencies we encountered, those were all different. I think we can fairly say that. But the fact that we had planned for so many at the in Johnson Space Center in our training, I think made us well prepared to handle the things that we did see that were not expected. So we were in the mode of being ready for surprises, and were able to overcome them because of the training that we had.
Right at the front.
Eric Merrill. I'm from Greater Detroit, Michigan, and I was curious if you guys had figured out who left the work light knob floating around Atlantis after the mission.
Well, see, I can answer. At least I was in charge of photo TV, but I didn't count the knobs when I put away the lights, so I'll take responsibility for that. And that was actually kind of a big concern because that knob due to pressure cycles, got jammed in the windows, and the windows are multi-paned, but changing out a window is a big deal. So luckily they pressurized the cabin, and they eventually got the knob out, and there was no damage. So.
Next question. Okay, I'm just trying to see the mic. Okay, let's take one over here. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm Frank from Catalonia. My question is for Stromike, in this case. How do you explain the Earth from the space in 140 characters, like a tweet?
Bueno, you count the characters as he says it.
Yeah, try to count my characters right now. See how many I got so far. Well, see, on the Twitter, they give you the countdown as you go down, so you can see where you are and you can kind of mess around a little bit. Yeah, there's really no words to describe it. How's that? There really aren't any words to describe it. It's just the way I try to describe it to people is, what I think of or what goes through your mind. And when I first looked at it, going back to my first flight on my first spacewalk, the thoughts that went through my mind were, if you were in heaven and you could look down on the earth, this is what you would see. This would be the scene. And that was replaced immediately by another thought, which was, no, it's more beautiful than that. This is what heaven must look like. And to me, that's how I describe it. There are no words to tell you. So really, no matter how many characters you had on Twitter, you couldn't do it justice. It's just a remarkable thing to experience, and feel very privileged to be able to have that view in front of you.
We'll take more questions here, but we're also taking questions Ustream. So let's take one right now from someone who's online. Catherine?
Sure. We have one from Miss Phenomenon. She wants to know, how much physical preparation does it take for a mission? Who wants to take that one?
Bueno.
Well, we trained a lot. We were together for almost 2.5 years. There's a lot of training. I can talk about the spacewalks. We spent probably between 12 and 16 hours in the pool for every hour in space. So there's a lot of training that goes on in the pool, the neutral buoyancy lab, this 40-foot pool that we have, and it's a great way to train for the spacewalks. And it's just a great experience to be in the suits as well. And a spacewalk is a physical activity. It's like a sporting event. And so it takes training for that too. So we go to the gym a lot. You have to do both aerobic activity and lifting weights. But one of the best ways to train is just to be in the suit and put up with the pressure of the suit and working against that.
I just have one comment because obviously I didn't do the spacewalks, but I watched them as they came in, and I remember one that Mike and Mike had done, and it was 8 hours, and it was pretty grueling. There's no question. And I asked Bueno, well, did you have enough water? And no, my water was gone 2 hours ago. And he came in and he got like a candy bar or something, and it was like, okay, get out of your suit because we got to get ready for tomorrow. And it was pretty physical, at least watching the guys after their EVAs.
Yeah, one of the differences, when we train in the neutral buoyancy lab, and we'd come home after the debrief at maybe 6 o'clock at night, and I'd be asleep on the couch, within minutes. But in space, we came inside and we had another couple hours of work to do. So yeah, it was you had to get changed, get a quick bite to eat, maybe something to drink, and then you were back to work, getting the tools ready for the next day. So, but a lot of adrenaline.
Thanks. We have a question here in the front.
Hi, Tiffany Titus from East Lansing, Michigan. My question's for Megan. I know that you've talked a lot about seeing the ocean from space, and now that you've had a chance to reflect on it, what do you think, and what are your thoughts?
Well, I think that, looking at the Earth, it's as Mike Massimino said, it's just beautiful. And, of course, most of our Earth is covered by oceans. Over 70% of the Earth is covered by oceans. So a lot of times when you're looking down, it really is the ocean that you're looking at. And it's just beautiful. And you can just sit and stare for hours. And the other thing that's really neat is you can see just this thin lens of the atmosphere around the planet. And you see how thin it really is compared to the vastness of space. And it sort of drives home that we have this beautiful, unique, but very fragile planet that we're responsible for. So that's sort of the feeling that I was left with.
Okay, thank you. There's a lot of questions in the back. How about up here, Steve? And then keep your hand up and try to flag down with the mic handlers, and we'll get to you a little faster. Thanks.
Chris Patton from DC. The flight crew from STS-125 was your, the crew for your backup in the event that you had an issue in space. Can you talk a little bit about the training that you had to do with a dual shuttle in space, and are you guys a backup crew for any pending launch or for 127? Thank you.
Yeah, every crew now has what you could call a launch on need crew identified. But for the station flights, the plan is that it'll be the next crew that goes up. So they would fly, and if they had a problem, stay at the station until the next crew could come get them in 60 to 90 days. For us, that wasn't an option because we were in a lower inclination orbit. We couldn't get to the station even if we'd wanted to. So that forced us, if we wanted to have a launch on need capability, to have another vehicle on the pad with the crew ready to go. Now that crew, since everybody else is now flying station missions, had to retrain to fly a mission like we did. So instead of using one of the coming crews, we had to use one of the crews that had already flown to come in. So for a while, the 123 crew was our rescue crew, and then we transitioned to the 126 crew because the 123 guys were further away from flight and weren't as current, and that changed the assignment matrix. But the really important thing, I think, is that it was not just that we had a rescue crew, it was that we attacked the problem in an in-depth way. First, fix the root cause of the problem, foam coming off the vehicle, then have an inspection capability in case you didn't fix it, have a repair capability in case you find something with the inspection, and then finally, if you get all the way down and none of your other solutions have worked, have a launch on need capability for somebody to come up and get you. The idea is that the other vehicle would have launched, rendezvoused with us within a day or so, so around flight day 9 to 10 for us. We would have been linked up, used the robotic arm to grapple our vehicle, and then we would have crossed in spacesuits, making basically 3 separate spacewalks to get everybody across and repressurize the airlock since we can't all go at once and fit in the airlock. Fortunately, we didn't need it.
Hi, I'm Brandon Powell from Phoenix, Arizona. I originally, when I was really young, went with my father to the STS-1 landing in Edwards Air Force Base, and I just wanted to see how you guys, how it inconvenienced you to land in Edwards.
Well, for me, I'm from California, so I actually had family spread across the country waiting for me wherever I was going to come home. I had my husband and my parents were in Florida, had one sister in Houston, and when she realized that we were looking like we were going to Edwards, she called up her husband, and unbeknownst to me, he loaded the kids in the car and they drove down to Edwards. So my mother says that I actually found out my nieces and nephews were going to be at Edwards, so I decided we'd land at Edwards instead. So for us, if you want to call it inconvenience of getting a couple extra days in space while they sorted that out, I guess that was the only inconvenience. But we enjoyed those days off, and we got a little bit of free time to look out the window and enjoy floating around some more, and watched a movie in space. That was fun. So really, the folks at Edwards are prepared to catch us, to take care of us, and they took great care of us. They really did, and we were on a plane home that same day. So it was no inconvenience to us. But of course, the space program then has to get the orbiter home to Florida. You may have seen some of that footage. It's pretty astonishing, really, to see the orbiter loaded on top of the plane that carries it back to Florida. But as a crew, I don't think that we were really inconvenienced.
Let's take one over here.
Yeah, Chris from Physics Central. While you were out there, especially those of you that were on the EVAs, did you observe any other satellites or debris in orbit?
Actually, when you look at Hubble fly over, if you live far enough south that you can see Hubble, you see at sunrise or sunset, or just after sunset or just before sunrise, you can see Hubble flying over, and that's because the sun is still on the Hubble while it's dark down below. And I did observe one satellite flash that seemed to be at about our altitude, so it was very likely one of the Iridium satellites. But I saw one. I was just happened to be looking out at the horizon around the terminator and saw something bright and then go out pretty quickly. And that's pretty common. That if you stare out the window long enough, you can see something like that.
You occasionally see a shooting star, just like you do from down here. The funny thing is that you're looking down when you see those, which makes me wonder about the ones going by above us.
Okay, before we take questions, we're going to take one more from Ustream.
All right, we have one here from Pearl Jam 743. How did you celebrate when you found out you were going to be an astronaut? I don't know who wants to take that one.
All right.
It's a long time ago for us.
Yeah, we can't remember so long ago. No, I was pretty ecstatic when I found out. I was at home at the time the phone call came, and my wife knocked on. I think I was getting ready to go to work at the time, living in Atlanta, and my wife knocked on the door and said, "Hey, some guy from NASA wants to talk to you." And sure enough, that was a call saying that I was selected, and I think I was just so shocked I didn't even know what to do. I was just really happy about it, and I think my brother came in, my brother for the win that night, and yeah, we had some celebrating, but it was really fun. It's just fun calling up your family and your friends and telling them that you'd been selected, and everyone's happy for you, and it's really a special moment.
Question here.
On the word celebration, it's Eric right now from New York. Carbonated beverages. Have you guys had any experience with fizzy, alcoholic or otherwise beverages, soft drinks in space, and what they are like?
Well, basically, no. We haven't been flying carbonated beverages in space because of the problems with keeping the gas in solution and having the bubble. I will say we have drinks in a drink bag. You drink them, and one of the most dangerous things to do in space actually is the burp reflex, because here on the ground, gravity keeps the liquid at the bottom and lets the gas go to the top. In space, sometimes you just have to watch out. There's somebody way in the back in the center with it. Oh, I'm sorry. You already got somebody with the mic.
Hi, I'm Billy Milner from Central New Jersey. I was just wondering, like, what the most unexpected or, like, strangest sensation of being in microgravity is, like, what you expected the least or surprised you the most, and what you thought was the best sensation of microgravity.
Well, let's see. I think I will say that floating in space was a lot more fun than I expected. It was just an incredible sensation. It's sort of like flying or swimming through the air. The closest thing here, I think, is floating in a pool. But there you have the water drag, and you can push against it. In space, you can just float. You can get out in the middle of the room and just be there and be still. And it's a wonderful feeling. I wish we could do it down here. It'd be a blast. We could take advantage of all this space up here. So that was, for me, unexpectedly, I just enjoyed floating so much up there. And I think the rest of us did too, because, everybody was always smiling and having a blast. I mean, you could just, you look around and it's like, what are you, or laughing, just laughing out loud. We were having so much fun up there. The other thing for me, though, was just going out the hatch the first time and, getting that first view of the Earth. As I poked my head out of the hatch and, and looked out the payload bay, and that we were facing, the payload bay was facing toward the Earth, and I saw the planet, and you could see the whole thing. The horizon was 360 degrees, and it was just an incredible view. And nothing, we talked about training earlier, but nothing can prepare you for that. I mean, there were no pool walls there, just looking out into the black of space. And that was another thing that I learned on this mission, is that the sky is black. Megan talked about it. The blue part, when you go outside and you see the horizon and, it's blue above that, that's just this tiny little, ribbon across that's the atmosphere. And the rest of it is black. So the sky is black. This is what I learned.
The Earth is round.
Hi, my name's Jazz Lejezovic. I'm over from London in the UK. I've got a question that's just come in from a friend of mine who's watching on the Ustream, who's also over in the UK, and I'd second this one. What made you want to become astronauts, and what would you say to current kids to motivate them to become part of the next phase of space exploration?
Let's use the most dynamic kids.
I just needed a job.
How about Megan and Drew? You guys want to answer that?
Okay. I think I first started to think about being an astronaut when I was a teenager in high school. I actually missed the moon landing, so a lot of times you'll hear folks say, well, the moon landings really inspired them. I actually wasn't born yet. So for me, it was living on a base. My dad was a naval aviator, and we lived on a Navy base in California where they share space with an Ames Research Center, another NASA center out there. And astronauts used to come out there, park their T-38s on the ramp, and stroll in to do the landing and rollout sim for the space shuttle. I thought that looked like a really cool job, and so that's kind of a big picture what motivated me. And then as I started to learn more about it, I thought, gosh, that's really a long shot to ever get to be an astronaut. But I was interested in space exploration and had always been interested in airplanes. And so I studied aerospace engineering at UCLA and just kind of always carried that idea with me that, wouldn't it be fun to be an astronaut someday? And so I think what I would tell students who are interested in this career, or really any career, is to just figure out what it is that you love to do. Don't try to pick something, when you're 14 or 15 years old and decide that that's what you have to be. Have a look around and see what's out there, and then just find what you love to do and then enjoy doing it. Because if you don't love doing something, you're not ever going to be good at it and you're not going to be happy. So that would be my advice to pass on to students, is to just, take your time and figure out what it is you love doing.
I second what Megan said.
Ryan Nadell from Vancouver, Canada. I know when I go on a trip to Europe, for example, and I come home, my perception and experience of home changes. Can you talk a little bit about how your experience here on Earth changes when you come back from space?
Okay, I'll answer that one. And I can tell you that one of the most impressive, or one of the experiences that had the greatest impression on me, was when we came back, actually, when we landed in the desert in California, waiting down on the middeck downstairs. It was just Mike Good and John and I, and waiting for the ground crews to come after they had safed the vehicle and approached, and eventually they opened a hatch, and I was sort of near the hatch, not too close, but as soon as they cracked the hatch open, the air from the desert, it seemed like it rushed into the vehicle, and immediately I could smell the air, and I couldn't see outside because we were inside the vehicle, but the smell brought in all the visual aspects of the desert, and I suddenly realized where we were, and it brought back kind of a flood of emotions that we were home, we were back on Earth, and I didn't realize how, I don't want to say stale the air had become, but how different the air was that came in from Earth. It was, I could smell the dirt, I could smell the shrubs, I could smell the bush, I could smell it all, and that really made a strong impression. And I can remember looking down, before we got back from space, and just thinking, wow, it's such a beautiful place, and we're up here, and we're isolated, it's desolate, and we're just living inside this aluminum frame of the vehicle. And it was really sort of it does give you a longing to come back and be back on the planet, and that it was really a very strong event when I finally realized we were home. And it wasn't just the landing, it was everything else that came with it.
Gene McCullough from Mine Hill, New Jersey. First off, as a taxpayer, that was sort of footing the bill for all this. You guys made us really, really proud up there, so thank you for making us really, really proud of our space program. The question I had for you guys is about teamwork. It just seemed to me that the whole enterprise, you had to have a lot of teamwork going into dealing with such a complex fix as trying to fix Hubble. What advice could you give all of us out here to maybe do a better job at fostering teamwork in our in a business or any other type of setting?
Your perception is absolutely on the mark that this mission involved not just the 7 of us in teamwork, but hundreds of people with the Goddard Space Flight Center and the Johnson Space Flight Center who were helping us while we were in space. They were on the ground watching us, plus thousands of others in back rooms and around the country as experts who helped train us, to probably 10,000 people that all had to get the space shuttles, plural, ready to go. And all of those components were crucial elements. And I think there are many themes that run through the teamwork aspects that contributed to our success. But I think in all of that, it was very much of people working together to becoming experts in what they're doing, and then training it over and over again. People trying to think of what angles they could have on if something goes wrong, what will we do, and trying to understand that before we got to space. So when we got to space, we had an enormously large number of anomalies that weren't expected, but that we were prepared for. And in the sense of being prepared for it as a team, we just said, okay, we know what to do, and then we went and executed that.
Question over here.
Hello, I'm Jim Edwards Hewitt from Northern Virginia. On the other side of the training question, one of my favorite tweets from Mike was after you got back when you described forgetting that you were in gravity and dropping groceries. So what's the process of readapting to not being in zero G anymore, and how long does that take you?
Well, there's certain things we're not supposed to do for a few days. Like we're not supposed to drive a car, fly an airplane, stuff like that. I think they probably didn't have a list when they first started, and then as people did things, like, hey, you ran that traffic light. Well, I just come back from space yesterday, so they put that one on the list. But we've got, now I think they're adding no grocery shopping. That's what I tweet. But that's what happened is I actually, you sometimes can forget and things. At least that was my excuse anyways. My wife was yelling at me, look what you did. I said, well, I thought I was still in space, maybe. Try to get away with it. But I think it takes a couple of days to kind of, you feel, I started feeling better after just a couple hours. Better meaning that when you first get there, things seem a little heavy, seem maybe like, I might be a little off balance, and that kind of goes away pretty quickly. But you have to be careful what you pick up. You don't want to do any heavy lifting. The no heavy lifting and no mowing the lawn was one that we put in there as a list, so we get out of the chores. But after a few days, you're feeling pretty good and back to normal. So you can't use it as an excuse after 3 or 4 days.
Thanks. We have one over here.
Hi, I'm Aaliyah Van Doren. I work at Goddard Space Flight Center with science teachers, and I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about what you guys were like in high school or middle school.
Go ahead, Ray. Tell us what you were like in high school.
Well, I was a model student. No, actually, somebody always asked me, well, what's my favorite subject in school? And it was PE was first, and then it was mathematics. I was kind of interested in electronics, actually. I built a lot of Heath kit, and I don't know if any of you have heard of that. But I built Heath kits, and I remember one that I finally convinced my dad to let me solder. So I was pretty young. I was like in 8 years old or something, not old enough to burn yourself with a soldering iron. And I built this amplifier and turned it on, and it had so much noise in it due to all the cold solder joints that I learned pretty quickly how to properly solder. But I guess I was always interested in math and science, but also very interested in fun, and that's kind of what drove me towards flying airplanes. But I think we all had, that interest as we went through school. I always enjoyed it. So.
We only have time for 2 more questions here. Unfortunately, for the formal part of the presentation, we'll have one up here, and then we got one more in the back.
My name is Rob Cowan from A Sky Full of Stars. A lot of amateur astronomers dream about being able to, with the naked eye, look at the dark sky without any atmosphere and without decompressing. I'm wondering if you could, for those of you that are maybe interested in astronomy or astronomy as your profession, tell us what strikes you most by just looking out there without any atmosphere.
First hear from the professional.
Actually, I'll tell you a little story about Mike Massimino and myself on STS-109, which was the mission that Scooter, Mass, and I flew on prior to this one, also a Hubble mission. And we're, as you've heard, we're pretty busy when we get to orbit. We have to turn the space shuttle from a rocket ship to get us to orbit into a spaceship that we can live and work out of, and get all the tools ready, get the spacesuits ready, rendezvous with the telescope. And it was, about flight day 3 when Mass came to me and he said, hey, John, can you see stars from space? I mean, we'd been working so hard we hadn't had time. And, of course, at Hubble's altitude, we only had 35 minutes of darkness anyway as we orbited the Earth at 17,500 miles an hour. So after we had dinner and before we went to bed that night, we went up to the flight deck during one of the night passes and turned down the lights and went up to a window, and, we had the ultimate planetarium. And as I was pointing things out to Mike, to mass, I said, and there's the Southern Cross, and there's the Coalsack Nebula. And then I said, oh, these windows are so dirty. And I wiped the window with a cloth. And I said, oh, that darn smudge on the window. And finally I said oops. Oh, and there's the Large Magellanic Cloud. And But it really is amazing. We're still looking through multiple panes of windows, except while we're out spacewalking with only the thin visor. But the number of stars that you see is not much different than you would see by going up to a high mountaintop, in a dry climate, say in the Southwest. But the big difference is, of course, without the disturbances from the atmosphere, the actual angular size of stars, and of course planets too, but stars in particular are much smaller. And so the two things that are really notable is, one, that of course the stars don't twinkle because there's no atmosphere, and that's kind of neat. They're really point-like. And because their size on the image that appears on your retina is so small, that the brightness is actually higher, the surface brightness, and so you see the colors much richer of the stars. I find that you really can start to distinguish all the spectral types of stars looking at them from space. It's very difficult to do looking through the atmosphere.
Thanks. We are only going to be able to take one more question because the commander and mission specialist, John Grunsfeld, have to run. I think we had one in the back.
Hi, Robert Perlman from Houston. And perhaps appropriate for our last question, at a tweet up. Just before you walked in, John asked us how many of us followed Astro Mike, and almost all the hands went up. So I'm wondering if the rest of your crewmates have caught the Twitter bug, or soon, and when will we start seeing your updates on Twitter? Thanks.
Well, that sounds like something we'd catch from mass, and we're all kind of scared about that. Go ahead.
Well, I have really enjoyed this whole Twitter thing. It was an idea that came from our public affairs office. They were looking for a guinea pig to try it, and why not ask me? But it's been really wonderful. The thing is, all you folks are following. I really appreciate all the responses I get, and I'm not very good about responding to the responses and answers, but I really do appreciate it. It was just wonderful to see all the good wishes we were getting before the flight, and then after the flight, reading through them as well. So I really can't thank you enough for following along and being there with us. And spaceflight is a great experience. We have, in my opinion, the greatest jobs in the world. But unfortunately, we can't take all of our friends and relatives with us, or all the people who are interested and would like to go. We just can't fit everybody in there. We're lucky they have room for us. So it's nice to be able to try to share it. And I felt that the Twitter experience was a great way to share it, and I'm still Twittering, and people are still following. So I don't know about the rest of them, though. We'll see if we can get them interested.
Right. It's a great answer, too. Before we conclude, just remember you can always get information on NASA programs and the space station, space shuttle, and everything else we do on www.nasa.gov/shuttle. And I think some of the astronauts will be able to stick around for a few minutes if you have questions, if you want to talk to them. Like I said, Commander Altman and John Grunsfeld have to leave. But thank you, everyone, for joining us. STS-125 crew.